What's happening? Happy Tuesday to you and yours. Thanks for joining me as always. It is very much appreciated. Before we get into the Patriots talk, I want to give a little bit of a shout out here to Larry Lucchino, who passed away. Rest in power, Larry Lucchino. He brought Theo Epstein to Boston. He was really driven to win. The evil empire comments always felt like he was going after it when he was here helping run the Red Sox. I don't think they win a World Series without Larry Lucchino. So rest in peace, Larry Lucchino. Let's remember him for the contributions he made to the Red Sox, making them along with Theo a winner here in Boston. So I don't want to forget that guy and what he meant to the franchise and what he meant to the fans and how he really shifted. He shifted the feel of this organization towards a winning organization. And you could argue it hasn't been the same since he has not been around. So rest in peace, Larry Lucchino. Just wanted to mention that at the top. All right, let's talk about the Patriots. The reports are swirling. And look, when you have a top 3 pick and it is a 3-quarterback draft or maybe now a 4-quarterback draft, these aren't going to go away. We have to brace for these, okay? Buckle up, strap on in, and get ready for more rumors and innuendo and reports and all of that. These things are going to continue to swirl until we get to draft night and find out what actually happens. Here's the latest. Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda came out with his 2-round mock draft. Here's what he did with the Patriots at number 3. And you might say, Nick, it's a mock draft. It's not a report. Well, within the pick for the Patriots is the report. Here's what Pauline writes. J.J. McCarthy to the Pats at 3. I'm not a big fan or not big on McCarthy being a top 10 selection, but the signal caller to New England was the buzz on the pro day circuit. Eliot Wolf is quote unquote pushing hard for McCarthy, and he believes he has as much upside as any quarterback in this draft. So Tony Pauline says that Eliot Wolf loves himself some J.J. McCarthy. He's pushing hard for McCarthy in the organization. He believes McCarthy has as much upside as anybody in this draft, including Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels, apparently. Now, let me get this out of the way before I get into what I think is actually happening here, okay? Let me just get into the thought at number 3 and where I see J.J. McCarthy. I want Drake May or Jaden Daniels. That's what I would do if I was Eliot Wolf. If I'm sitting there on draft night, and I have my pick of one of those 2 guys, which you will, because we know Caleb's going 1, I would stick and pick. I would draft one of those 2 guys, and I would be very happy with that pick. Yes, there are some flaws. Yes, there are some weaknesses. Yes, there are some questions, but that's what I would do. I would draft May or Daniels at 3. Now, as far as J.J. McCarthy is a first-round talent. He's a first-round talent. He has a very, very high floor. There are arguments to be made that McCarthy will be a good to very good NFL quarterback. And hopefully we get to some of those things as we get closer to the draft. But his performance on third down, his performance in the red zone, his lack of turnover-worthy plays, his athleticism, he's got a good arm. There are arguments to be made that McCarthy is going to be a good to very good quarterback at the next level, which is why I believe that McCarthy is a first-round talent. But I'm not picking McCarthy at 3. I'm just not going to make that selection. I have not seen an elite physical trait from McCarthy. And when I talk about an elite physical trait, I'm talking about Drake May's arm. I'm talking about Daniels' athleticism. I'm talking about Caleb Williams, the whole package, his ability to extend plays, his arm strength, making something out of nothing. Now, I don't see that elite trait from McCarthy. He's got a good arm, not a great arm. He's got good athleticism, not Jaden Daniels' athleticism. There's a difference between very good and elite. And if I'm drafting somebody at 3, I have to see an elite trait within that human being on the field. And I don't see that with McCarthy. When we talk about picking somebody 3rd, we talk about a ceiling. We talk about potential. And McCarthy's ceiling, to me, is below the ceiling of May and Daniels. McCarthy was also never asked to carry Michigan. And now That's not McCarthy's fault. McCarthy was on a very good team, ended up being the national champion. They had a very good offensive line. They had a fantastic run game. But McCarthy was never truly asked to carry the team. He made plays. Again, third down, red zone, but he wasn't asked to be that guy. And inevitably, that leads you to the question, can he be that guy? Now, you might believe he can be that guy, but if you don't know without any shadow of a doubt, if you haven't seen him do it, and you haven't seen him do it multiple times at the collegiate level, then how in the world can you feel super ooper confident that he could be that guy at the NFL level? So those are some of the questions. He played with a lead a lot. Michigan was up. You look at games like Penn State. I mean, Penn State was a tight game, but they ran the football 32 straight times. I'm not telling you that was because McCarthy can't throw the ball or McCarthy can't make plays. But what I'm telling you is the fact that Michigan had the capability of running the football 32 straight times against a nationally ranked, I think they were in the top 10 at that point, Penn State team. I watched that game. I watched it from beginning to end down in Virginia Beach. And I'll tell you, 32 straight runs. Again, it's not because McCarthy can't do something. It's the fact that Michigan could beat you in that way. They did not have to rely on the quarterback. They were fine saying, we will run with Blake Corum 32 times. We're good. We're just going to run this down your throat. I'd also mention the fact that Jim Harbaugh is better, much better, than anybody on the North Carolina or LSU staff. So McCarthy had the better coaching staff, which leads us to this. Again, I believe McCarthy's a first-round talent. I don't believe he's a top 3 talent, which leads us to question whether or not this is a smokescreen. Before I get into that, just want to remind you that the Nick Cattle Show is brought to you by Warzone Paintball and Airsoft. Warzone has 9 maps on 30-plus acres of land. We're talking multiple villages, a trench warfare map, hilltop forts. They've got paintball. They've got airsoft. They've got kid versions of paintball and airsoft, something for every age group starting at 6+. Show up with jeans, good shoes, long sleeve shirt, and Warzone will take care of the rest. And if you're new, no worries. Warzone's rules are designed to protect new players. It's low-key, it's casual, and the staff is great. I mean, check it out online. 4.9 star rating, online where everybody complains. A 4.9 star rating. Check out Warzone Paintball and Airsoft in North Kingston, Rhode Island. Give them a call at 401-228-6366. That's 401-228-6366. Tell them Nick Cattles, we sent you. All right, let's get into this idea of the smoke screen. Here's what I feel is happening. Of course, anything is possible. McCarthy could end up being a top 3 pick. Anything is possible. All of this stuff that we're hearing could be 100% true. I feel like it's a big fat smokescreen. I feel like it's a big fat smokescreen because there's just been too much of it. We have been inundated for the past several weeks with J.J. McCarthy and his projection going up and up and up and up. It's like every single day we hear from somebody else telling us that McCarthy is going in the top 5. Every day. Let me ask you this. Is anybody talking about Drake May going in the top 3 or Jaden Daniels going in the top 3? Is anybody questioning Caleb Williams going in the top 3? Is anybody talking about those guys falling out of the top 3 or the top 5? I have not heard much of anything regarding May, Daniels, and Williams falling precipitously in the draft. But somehow, every day, it's almost like clockwork. We get an update on J.J. McCarthy. And every single time we get an update on McCarthy, it's a great update for McCarthy. There's not a cross word. No one's doubting him. No one's questioning him. No one's talking about. No one's talking about this idea of J.J. McCarthy not being a top 5 guy. Now it's all you hear. And I see where are my entertainers? May seems to be falling, at least relatively. Why is May falling? What's the context? May is falling because McCarthy is rising. It's this idea of, yeah, there are three quarterbacks, but May's not the third guy. McCarthy is the third guy. Every single report about McCarthy since the season has ended has been a positive, glowing review about the young man. And look, again, he could be a very good NFL quarterback at the next level. But don't you find it a little strange that it's this just nonstop pumping and pushing of J.J. McCarthy? Every day, this guy is the talk of the town. Doesn't that raise the poop detectors a little bit? Doesn't it? So who's talking? Who's talking about McCarthy so much? That's a question you always have to ask. Who is talking and why are they talking? How about JJ's agents? The higher McCarthy goes in the draft, the more money he's going to make. The more money he makes, the more money his agents make. So I think JJ McCarthy's agents are working overtime. Who else could be talking? How about the Arizona Cardinals? The Arizona Cardinals have all the reason in the world to try to pump J.J. McCarthy. If Arizona, and we know this, Monty Ossenfort, he traded last year the third pick in the draft to Houston. We know that Ossenfort is willing to deal a top 5 pick. He just did it last year. And Ossenfort spoke at the league meetings. He's talking about how they're open for business. So pumping this as a 4-quarterback class absolutely helps the Arizona Cardinals. How about McCarthy's college coach? How about Jim Harbaugh? You don't think pumping McCarthy's value helps Jim Harbaugh? Of course it does. Harbaugh's in L.A. now. Chargers don't need a quarterback. What do the Chargers need? Let me think about it. Harbaugh loves offensive line play, believes you build a football team through the trenches. They also traded Keenan Allen and released Mike Williams. So you're telling me that Harbaugh pumping the tires of his former college quarterback won't help him at 5? Of course it would. If 1 through 4 are all quarterbacks, that means Harbaugh is sitting back with his feet up, able to draft either Joe Alt or Marvin Harrison Jr. Many people believe the 2 best offensive players that are not quarterbacks in this draft. Start to put the pieces together. Nonstop talk about McCarthy, all of it positive. McCarthy going in the top 5 would help Arizona. It would help Arizona as well to get a haul for the 4th pick, right? Again, because if you think this is a 4-quarterback draft and you keep throwing that idea out there, then you will move that 4th pick for what you're hoping is a gigantic haul. So you've got Arizona pumping the tires. You've got the Chargers and Harbaugh pumping the tires. What did Harbaugh say? His first public interview as the Chargers coach. What did he say? Oh, I think McCarthy's the best quarterback in the class. He could go number 1. Oh, you think, Jim? So all of a sudden, we've been inundated by this positive McCarthy talk. Nonstop every day for the last several weeks. Over and over and over again. It helps Arizona. It helps LA. It helps JJ's agents because inevitably it helps JJ McCarthy himself. All right. Before we get into the Patriots side of this, I want to first tell you, don't forget to give us that thumbs up. Likes, they mean the world to us. Every single like is how we defeat the YouTube algorithm. We only stream live to YouTube now. Of course, you can get us on demand on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Pods. But give us that like. If you enjoy the conversation, if you enjoy the content, if you enjoy the program, give us that thumbs up. Means the world to us. And subscribe. Trying to hit 3,000 subscriptions over the next 6 days. We've got 6 days, and we're about 150 subscriptions away. So we still need $150 to subscribe to this channel to hit our goal of 3,000 6 days from right now, April 8th. So let's keep pushing. I appreciate all of the support. That's how we are going to survive. That's how we are going to continue to give people an alternative to what they listen to in other places. So give us that like and subscribe. All right. Before I get to the Patriots side of this, Let's go to Vitalix with a super chat. Of course, if you want to jump to the front of the line with your comment or question, you can send a super chat. You also help the show financially. When the top 10 rumors started, I thought some poorly ran team would fall for the hype over the tape. What are the odds he's this year's Will Levis and slides pretty far, or too many quarterback needy teams? I could talk about Will Levis. He's a great name to bring up. Charles Robinson at Yahoo recently wrote about Levis and the mysterious quarterback hype train that tends to happen as we get closer to the draft, and it usually falls on one guy. Levis was the guy last year, right? Levis was being talked about going to the Colts last year. Yeah, at 4. And Levis fell and fell and fell. You could talk about, other quarterbacks in previous years, right? Talk about Willis and how he fell and fell and fell. So here's what I would say. I'm not going to guarantee you that Eliot Wolf is going to be right with the pick they make. I'm not telling you Wolf is going to hit a home run or a grand slam at the quarterback position through this draft, whether it's at 3 or somewhere else. But what I can tell you, Patriots fans, is that Wolf is a tried and true, through and through film guy. He believes in the film. That's how he evaluates players. He believes in the film. He believes what his eyes tell him. Alonzo Highsmith does that as well. So it's a heavy, heavy film front office right now. So I don't think these guys, at least I don't think they're going to get swayed with any kind of 23rd hour pumping of the tires. They have seen what they have seen. They were at the pro day for all of these top guys. So that's what I would say, Vitalix. Thanks for the super chat. Andrew Callahan last night, I thought, brought up a very interesting point on NBC Sports Boston. He said, who is Wolf pushing? Again, Pauline's report in the Sportskeeda says that Eliot Wolf is pushing hard for McCarthy. Now, maybe they're trying to get that consensus we talked about last week that I've mentioned is going to be very difficult. If you want everybody in the room to buy in on somebody, that's very difficult, especially if the room is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. 9 guys at the pro day of Drake May. It's a huge room. So maybe that's it. But Wolf's making the call. You could argue maybe he's pushing ownership. Maybe he's pushing others in the room. But Wolf is making this call. And if Wolf is making this call, he doesn't have to push anybody. He inevitably will make the pick. And if he loves J.J. McCarthy, then he would pick J.J. McCarthy. Why would the Patriots be so obvious about it, by the way? Why would we be talking about how the buzz around the Patriots was that they wanted McCarthy? It's funny. The Washington Commanders, everything that I've read, it's nobody really knows what Washington is going to do. They could go with May. They could go with Daniels. You'll have to watch the draft to find out. That's all I've heard about Washington. But the Patriots, every other day, there's a Patriots rumor. Here's what I think. And I've covered the draft in a lot of different ways. I covered the draft nationally for a number of years. Here's what I would say. Usually the team that is the quote-unquote sexiest team is the one that is at the heart of all of the rumors. Why are people always talking about the Patriots? Because the Patriots have the 3rd pick. What were people saying when the season ended? The draft is really going to start at number 3. That's what we heard. Now, back then it was supposed to be, it's going to be Caleb Williams, it's going to be Drake May, and then the draft starts at 3. That's why we're going to hear this stuff and have heard this stuff. Because I don't think anybody on God's green earth outside of Eliot Wolf and a select few know who the Patriots absolutely adore in this draft at the quarterback position. So I've got a theory. Before I get into that theory, give us that thumbs up, like us. All the likes help. We build this community. If you looked at social media yesterday at Nick C Radio, I had tweeted out the numbers from the first month of this podcast to last month. And the numbers are continuing to grow and grow, and it's because of your support. It's because of all of you. I appreciate you. Give us that thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, about 150 subscriptions away from our goal. We've got 6 days to get there. So like and subscribe, rate and review. Spotify, Apple Pods, I see those reviews jumping up as well. I appreciate you. I see you. Here's my theory. You ready? Here's my theory. What if New England, and it's just a theory, okay? That's all it is. I'm not telling you this is exactly what's happening. I don't know what's happening. I don't know Eliot Wolf. I don't know Alonzo Highsmith. What if New England, let's have a hypothetical here. What if New England doesn't love one of May or Daniels? Maybe they don't love either guy. Let's just say that's the premise. What if they don't love May and or Daniels? What if they do love the idea of J.J. McCarthy, but not at number 3? What if the Patriots love the idea of McCarthy later on in the draft? Remember what Gerard Mayo said at the league meetings talking about the quarterback position? He brought up competitiveness and toughness. He brought up decision-making. Many people reacted saying, that sounds like J.J. McCarthy. Great decision-maker, intangibles, etc. What if the Patriots love the idea of McCarthy, but later on in the first round? What if they say, we really love that guy, but we don't think that we have to pick him at 3. We don't believe that he's going to go 3. We believe we can get the guy that we really like or love or really want. We can get him a little bit later in the draft. We don't have to use that 3rd pick. So keep that in mind. Maybe the Patriots love the idea of getting McCarthy a little bit later than 3. What happens? Well, Minnesota adds the first-round pick, right? What if the Patriots don't believe that McCarthy is going to go between 3 and 11? What if the Patriots believe McCarthy will absolutely be there at that 11th pick? And remember that there was a rumor that just came out over the past week about how the Giants very interested in J.J. McCarthy. Was that rumor about the Giants somewhat of a panic from the agents of J.J. McCarthy? Because they actually know the reality. And do they know that the reality is McCarthy's going to fall beyond 6? He could fall to 10. He could fall to 11. He could fall to 12 or 13. And so the agents are scrambling, trying to throw every team between 3 and 11 out there as a possibility. Again, I would go May or Daniels at 3. That's what I would do. But I don't know it all. Quarterback evaluations, as I said yesterday, they're all over the place. How many teams have gotten it wrong? There's a reasonable argument. There's a reasonable argument to move down and draft McCarthy. Before I get to that reasonable argument, I got a couple of super chats that came on in. Justin TF, Patriots, stay away from the annual hype train quarterback. JJ, yeah, again, Will Levis has been that guy. Malik Willis was that guy. You can go throughout time and you will find one. It's not every single draft, but you will certainly find one. EJ Manuel was one, and, he ended up going in the first round to Buffalo, but a lot of people were saying, EJ Manuel could go in the top 5, go to the top 7. So beware is right. Charlie jumping in. Looking forward to the Discord chat tonight. Might function as therapy for me. So much to consider at 3. Can only imagine it's going to get more wild as the draft approaches. Yeah, Charlie talked about the Discord chat. Discord chat is part of the Patreon page that I run. Exclusive content. We give you yesterday. We just started this, by the way, on that Patreon page. We just started posting these podcasts ad-free. So if you just want to watch the podcast without getting smacked in the head with ads, you can do it by signing up for the Patreon page. We also give you a bonus podcast every Wednesday night exclusively to Patreons. And we do a Discord chat every couple of weeks. Tonight, we will be doing the Discord chat on that Patreon, which is fun. You get a mailbag on Friday. So thanks to Charlie. Look forward to chatting with you a little bit later on. You want more details on that Patreon page, patreon.com/Nick Cattles, Cattles. Thanks, Charlie. Talk to you in a little while, buddy. VT, what are the updates on Jaden Daniels? Yeah, not much. Not much, honestly, VT. I mean, people saw his pro day. There wasn't much of a shock about what they saw from his pro day. He weighed in at 210 pounds. Some people took that as a good number. He was listed at 210, playing for LSU. So I don't know, how much you want to go bananas over that 210 number. That's not going to be his playing weight. And, the Daniels elbow stuff came out. Whatever to that. I mean, he has said he's healthy. I'm sure something would have come up at the combine during the medicals. I don't think there's a legitimate physical issue there with Daniels. So, but not much. I mean, I think Daniels is seen as the guy who's going 2 or 3. And many people would say Daniels is going to go 2. I've seen some of it that Daniels is now back being the 2 guy within that, race of Drake May and Daniels. All right. So again, I would not draft McCarthy. And thanks to all of you sending the super chats. I would not draft McCarthy at 3. I would draft May or Daniels. Okay. But I do think there's a reasonable argument to be had that if you drafted McCarthy later in the first round, it would make sense if it all worked, which I'll get into in a minute. But why would it be reasonable? Why would there be a reasonable argument? Because the Patriots are not focused on 2024. The Patriots are focused on the long term. And if Eliot Wolf is looking at McCarthy and he says to himself, McCarthy just turned 21 years old in January. If McCarthy went back to Michigan, where would McCarthy be drafted in 2025? You got Shedeur Sanders, you've got Quinn Ewers, and then you've got who? You could argue that if McCarthy stayed at Michigan for one more year, he could be the number 1 pick. Now, you could argue the opposite. You could argue that McCarthy could have went back to Michigan, had a worse year, and his draft stock fell. That's what some would argue about Drake May. They'd say, look at his 2023. Others would say, look at his 2022. But if Eliot Wolf is looking at this and saying, this is a 2 to 3 year rebuild, and I believe that McCarthy could be really good in the next 2 or 3 years, but he's not there yet. And I'm not going to use the 3rd pick overall on a guy who I don't think is there yet. So I'm going to wait, and I'm going to pull a trigger on a trade. I'm going to move down, and I'm going to draft McCarthy later, because if I draft McCarthy later and I sit him for a year, people won't freak out as much. I can't tell you how many have said to me, you can't draft the guy at number 3 if you're going to sit him. If you draft the guy at number 3, you got to play that guy right away. What if Wolf agrees with that? What if Wolf looks at McCarthy and says, if this is 2025, everybody would be screaming for me to pick J.J. McCarthy. But it's a year too early. But I still believe that guy has that in him. And if you're focused on 2025, then moving down in the draft slightly and still getting your quarterback in the future, it makes sense if you just think about it generally. If McCarthy's going to be a top 3 pick in 2025, then if you pick him a little bit later in the first round this year, then you still get that guy who would be a top 3 pick in next year's draft. Again, if this is what Eliot Wolf is thinking, and this would be the reasonable argument, this would be the pushback. He turned 21 in January, still has a lot of room to grow. We've got Jacoby Brissett as the bridge quarterback for 2024. We move down the draft a little bit. We draft McCarthy. We sit McCarthy. We work with him. We develop him. And then in 2025, when he would have been a top 3 pick, that's when we have our guy ready at quarterback. He is our QB1 for 2025 through 2040. That's the plan. And you're also picking up draft capital, right? Because not only are you getting McCarthy a little later in the first round, you're doing that by getting picks for the 3rd pick in the draft. If you don't love Daniels, you don't love May, or you think that McCarthy will be better than both of those guys 2 years down the road, and you think you can get McCarthy later in the first round, then you trade that third pick to a team who does love Drake May. And by the way, as we run through this pushback on it, right? If you do make that deal, you make that deal with Minnesota, who does Drake May know very well? And who knows Drake May very well? Josh McCown, who works on the Vikings staff. So you start to put these pieces together. Vikings pick up an extra first-round pick. Patriots don't think J.J. McCarthy is going to go between 3 and 11. They have no problem moving down and getting picks from Minnesota because they feel like McCarthy is going to be the answer in 2025, not so much the answer in 2024. They pick up that extra draft capital. They load up at receiver and tackle at number 23, 34, and 68. So now you get McCarthy at 11. Then you get an offensive tackle at 23. Then you get, your wide receivers at 34 and 68. And now you have a year to develop your young quarterback, and you go into 2025 with that tackle, those 2 wide receivers, and J.J. McCarthy with a year of development underneath his belt, and with 2 first-round picks in 2025. So when you think of it that way, there is a reasonable argument to be had. Reasonable argument. And I understand Alex Barth did a great job of writing this column at 98.5 The Sports Hub, talking about how trading down for a quarterback was a disaster. I asked myself, who were the picks? And Phil Perry noted the picks over the last 30 years. Over the last 30 years, the first rounders, here's what we got. By the way, Drygo jumping in said 7 likes. We got 7 likes. I can't pay attention to the likes while I'm doing this. Come on, people. Give me the thumbs up. Thumbs up helps the pod. More likes means more eyeballs. Do all you can to help the product. So who was drafted after the team traded down? Because Alex Barth, again, did a great job writing how trading down and drafting a quarterback in round 1 was a disaster. Who were those guys? And what were the circumstances? I'll get into that in a minute, but we got more super chats pouring in. Devin Allen, $10 super chat. Thank you, Devin. JJ is Mac Jones 2.0 stat. College team has pumped him up. I've lived the low ceiling, high floor guy. By the way, Wolf picked Baker ahead of Allen and Jackson. I'm concerned. Mayer, Daniels, or bust. Well, again, Wolf did not pick Baker. That was not his decision to make. He was part of the front office. Obviously, you could look at Baker. Now, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, obviously, were better quarterbacks in that draft. How did Eliot Wolf feel? He might have been all in favor of it. And if he was, you can certainly look back at that and say, he missed, but did he miss badly? Baker Mayfield is still a starting quarterback in the NFL. Now, he's not number 1 pick starting quarterback in the NFL, but, it wasn't a complete bust. It wasn't Jamarcus Russell. At least you could say that for it. Mac Jones, I don't think J.J. McCarthy's Mac Jones. J.J. McCarthy is more athletic than Mac Jones. He has a better arm than Mac Jones. Mac Jones had much better receivers at Alabama than McCarthy had at Michigan. McCarthy had good receivers at Michigan. Roman Wilson would be the guy that you talk about an awful lot. Wilson's probably going to go in the 2nd, 3rd round. That was not the embarrassment of riches that Mac had. So I think McCarthy is a different product than Mac Jones. I think he has a higher ceiling than Mac Jones. I don't think he has an incredible ceiling. I don't think, J.J. McCarthy has a higher ceiling than Daniels or May or Williams, but I do think he has a higher ceiling than Mac Jones. William Sprague jumps in, $5 super chat. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Nick is unique and very informative. I challenge everyone to share this video to get Nick to 3,000 subscribers. Well, thank you, William. I appreciate the kind words. I appreciate the challenge. Trying to hit 3,000 subs within the next 6 days is going to have to take a big push, but I think we can do it. I'm not super confident, but I feel it's possible. And thank you, William. And then JB jumps in. No question, no comment, but JB sends a $10 super chat. Thank you, JB. That is very, very much appreciated. All right, so moving down and picking a quarterback in the first round. Alex Barth wrote, that has not worked out. And it hasn't worked out. Over the last 30 years, here are the first rounders that teams have selected after moving down. Kerry Collins, Cade McNown, Patrick Ramsey, Rex Grossman, and E.J. Manuel. Now, how would those guys differ from McCarthy? And Kerry Collins started 13 games his rookie year. Like, he was the guy. He was the dude. Meanwhile, Cade McCown, I found this on Wikipedia, so you can always trust it. But McCown was held out most of training camp his rookie season because he wanted more money. So that really set him back. And McCown started 6 games in his rookie season. How about Patrick Ramsey? Ramsey started 5 games his rookie year. Rex Grossman started 3 games his rookie year. And then in his second season in 2004, there was a head coaching change. Lovie Smith took over in Chicago, and Grossman tore his ACL. So I think Rex Grossman, that's a difficult thing, right? I mean, the dude tore his ACL, and that's back in 2004 when it was very tough. E.J. Manuel was drafted, and he started 10 games in his rookie year. So I tell you all of that because moving down and drafting J.J. McCarthy, it's not a fait accompli that it's going to fail. It's just not. What's the likelihood of it succeeding? Well, history would tell you not great. But not one of those guys that were drafted after the team moved down, not one of those guys, not a single one, was sat for the entire rookie season. Not a single one was sat and developed. That's a drastic change. If the Patriots are okay moving down and drafting McCarthy, and they plan on developing him for a full year and not throwing him into the deep end, that is a completely different set of circumstances than any of those guys that I just mentioned faced in their rookie seasons. All of those guys I mentioned are also older than McCarthy and much older. McCarthy turned 21 in January. 21 in January. Now, with all of that said, it would be a very risky move by Wolf. You have a top 3 pick. You have May, you have Daniels sitting there. You could just stick and pick, and that's what I would do. Very risky for Wolf to move down and draft a quarterback based off of history. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it would be the wrong move. Not the move I would make. But I'm not the end-all, be-all. It does not necessarily mean it would be the wrong move. And why do I say that? Well, it's risky because if you move down, you could lose McCarthy. If he is the guy that you truly want, you could lose him. You move down to 11, somebody jumps in front of you and takes him. That's a huge risk. Another risk is that you don't draft May or Daniels, and both of those guys end up being unbelievable. They end up being top 8 quarterbacks, and McCarthy doesn't end up being that guy. That's the huge risk. But as I said yesterday, it's all about the evaluation. It's all about the eval. It's all about your board. If Eliot Wolf feels better than that, if Eliot Wolf knows J.J. McCarthy is going to be there later than 3, he'll have the option possibly to trade up a few picks from 11 to get that deal done. But if he feels, if his intel is telling him that McCarthy is not going in the top 3, he's going to fall back down. And all of this is just smoke. If you feel that way, if you know the board, and you feel strongly that McCarthy could end up being a top quarterback by 2025, 2026, then you would make that move. Before I go on to something else, I want to talk about Michael Penix for a minute. I just want to leave you with this. Again, I would draft Mayor Daniels at 3. I would stick and pick. I would draft the very, very high ceiling guys. However, let's not forget what Baltimore did back a few years ago. The Ravens drafted Hayden Hurst, 25th overall. 25th overall. Hayden Hurst was the pick by the Ravens. They picked Hayden Hurst 25th. Then they moved back into the end of the first round to draft Lamar Jackson. The Ravens had Hayden Hurst rated higher than Lamar Jackson. They thought drafting Hurst at 25 was a better move than drafting Lamar Jackson at 25. Jumped back in at 32 and drafted Jackson. Very risky. Very risky. Could have done a lot of other things, but they didn't. And it ended up working out perfectly. Now, again, I will stress this. I would draft Mayor Daniels at 3. That's what I would do. I would make that pick. But there have been examples of teams taking risks at quarterback and those risks paying off. And if Eliot Wolf moves down to 11, gets all of these picks from Minnesota, gets McCarthy at 11, gets the starting tackle on the left side at 23, then double dips at wide receiver, right? Then double dips at wide receiver at 34 and 68. And then in 2025, we're walking into a season and McCarthy's ready and he plays well. Eliot Wolf looks like a genius. But if McCarthy fails, he falls on his face, and May and Daniels end up blossoming and becoming unbelievable quarterbacks at the next level, then Wolf will end up being fired in short order. But I do think there's a reasonable argument that could be had that, hey, you move down, you pick the quarterback at 11, you sit him for a year, and the next thing you know, you've got a great situation in 2025, which is what you're really focused on. All right, I want to get to Penix quickly, but JB Brown jumped in with a super chat. Article over the weekend suggested that O'Connell feels the 2 first-rounders this year alone are enough to move to 3 or 4. I wouldn't do that, would you? No. I don't care what O'Connell feels. I would imagine that Minnesota would feel that less would get them more. I don't care. I don't care. What I would suggest to Kevin O'Connell is to look up the San Francisco 49ers Miami Dolphins deal going back a few years ago for Trey Lance. What I would suggest to Kevin O'Connell is the starting point is a swap in the first round and then 2 additional first-round picks. That's the starting point. And I might even want more than that. So I appreciate Kevin O'Connell looking on the rosy side of things for his Vikings. But if you're offering me 11 and 23 to move up to 3, thanks but no thanks. Because the first pick is a swap, which we never talk about. You can't term it as 3 first-round picks when you swapped your own first-round pick. You move up from 11 to 3, and all you really had to pay was the 23rd pick. No, not enough. If you're moving up from 11 to 3, for a quarterback especially, if you're making that kind of a jump, you've got to give me more than the 23 pick. So no, I do not. I do not want to do that. I would absolutely want more. All right, don't forget to like and subscribe. Again, all the thumbs help. More thumbs means more eyeballs. Build this community. Trying to extend the reach, and that's how we do it, by beating the algorithm on YouTube. Giving that thumbs up, giving that like takes a second of your time. Also subscribe. 6 days away, trying to hit the 3,000 subscriber goal. We're about 150 away from it. Patreon page, Discord chat tonight. All of these podcasts posted ad-free on the Patreon page, patreon.com/Nick Cattles, Cattles. You can check the details out at that website. $5 a month. All right, before we go, Jordan Schultz, Bleacher Report, reported that Michael Penix is having dinner with the New York Giants. He is working out for Minnesota. He also says that Penix is taking visits with Denver, Atlanta, Vegas, and Washington. You notice who wasn't mentioned in any of that? The Patriots. Now, maybe the Patriots line a visit up with Penix, but they have no dinner lined up with Penix. They have no visit lined up with Penix. They only had Cam Williams along with 3 or 4 scouts at the Washington Pro Day, while they had 9 dudes instead of including the very top decision makers at Drake May's Pro Day. They did not meet with Penix at the Combine. Now, they talked to him, I'm sure, at the Senior Bowl, but you talk to everybody at the Senior Bowl. So what we have seen and heard is that the Patriots have not really bothered with Michael Penix at all. Now, that either means they're completely out on Penix or they're totally in on Penix and they're running the game, which would be very interesting. Maybe they love Penix and say he'll be there at 34. Maybe they love Penix and they say, hey, we could trade with Minnesota and we could draft Penix at 23. Maybe they think they can move back into the first round and the late first round and draft Penix. And they're not showing anybody. They're not showing anybody their hand. It absolutely could be that. They are either completely out on this guy or they are playing the greatest swerve okie doke game that I have seen. Now, wide receivers coach Tyler Hughes, of course, was at Washington last year. So he would have intel on Penix. My gut on that Schultz report, by the way, is, again, it's the agents doing work. Just like I think the agents are trying to get J.J. McCarthy drafted in the top 3, or at least in the top 5. I feel like Michael Penix's agents are throwing this stuff out there because they feel like there's not a lot of desire for their guy in the market right now. So how do we try to stoke the flames of the market? He went to dinner with the Giants. He's working out with Minnesota. You got Denver, Atlanta, Vegas, and Washington. I mean, if you look at that list, Atlanta just signed Kirk Cousins. Why would they pick Michael Penix? Right? Washington has the second pick in the draft. They're going to pick Daniels or May. Minnesota reportedly wants to move up, not back. So now maybe they can't move up at 11 from 11 and they draft Penix at 23, possibility. But I think that's agent work. All right. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Help us out. Continue to build. Trying to hit 3,000 subscriptions by March 8th. By my count, that's 6 days away. We're about 150 subscriptions away from that mark. You can help us by liking and subscribing to this show. Get notified when we go live, when breaking news happens. Rate and review Spotify, Apple Pods. Patreon page, Discord chat tonight should be fun. Ad-free video on demand. Every podcast. Just started that yesterday at that page. Appreciate every single one of you. Unless something breaks, we'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Until then, this has been the Nick Cattle Show.